Esteemed candidate, you confront a committee which was appointed by the Council of Deans and that is charged with the task of examining both your dissertation and the propositions submitted therewith. Professor Waters will open the examination.
Esteemed candidate, I will ask the question on behalf of Robert Verheyen, but first I would like to congratulate you myself with a beautiful self-reflective thesis. Robert Verheyen, thank you, André, for your excellent study of the CAPES evaluation model, expertly relating it to the evaluation literature and to evaluation experiences in other parts of the world. I'm sorry that I cannot be present for your dissertation defense. However, in my absence, I would like you to address for the committee the following issues and associated questions. The CAPES 7-point evaluation scale is controversial and widely debated within the Brazilian academic community. One debated aspect pertains to the proper number of grades to be attributed to each program. Should the grade be unitary, as is currently the case, or should it be multiple, with each evaluation dimension receiving a different grade? A second aspect concerns the size of the scale. Some believe it should be expanded, ranging, for example, from grades 1 to 10, while others think it should be reduced, for example, to a 3-point scale. Finally, a third aspect relates to how the grade or grades of each program should be determined. Should the approach be comparative, perhaps using the norm as a reference, or should it be based on predetermined criteria, thereby not restricting, for example, the number of programs that can reach the top of the scale? Based on your research, please address these three aspects, indicating for each the advantage and disadvantages of the different sides of the debate, and also presenting and justifying your personal position on the matter. In other words, André, with respect to the CAPES evaluation, do you favor, first, scaling that is unitary or multiple? Second, a scale that is expanded, reduced, or maintained as it is? And third, scaling that is norm-referenced or criterion-referenced. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you, hoogeleerde opponents, for your kind words and the interesting questions posed by Robert in this occasion. They are very difficult questions to answer in a short period of time, but I will try so people know me, the challenge that I face right now, but I'll try to be as objective as possible. So the first point is about the grades. So right now, CAPES has a scale of 1 to 7 to rank the programs. And that creates a kind of problem that's similar to what we face with most university rankings. So we have some sort of calculation, a black box calculation that generates a grade that does not reflect reality. So even though in the case of CAPES, that's not really a black box, we know how the calculations are performed. In the last evaluation cycle, societal impact carried only 10% of the weight. So even if you perform very well in societal impact, that will probably have little effect on the final grade that you have. So why would a research unit put a lot of effort into developing that dimension of its work to be able to have absolutely no impact at all? So let's publish more, because publications would account for about 80% of the final grade. So unless we move to a system, and this is something I propose in the concluding chapter, unless we move to a system where it can grade separately the different dimensions that we're valuing, education, the scientific production, the societal impact, we will not allow the graduate programs to achieve their best at the dimensions that they intend to be the best, because not everyone should have the same profile. Evaluation, as we have in the Netherlands, should be based on mission and objectives. So I would defend to have a multiple grade in that sense. Regarding expanding the scale, this has been a huge debate at CAPES for a very long time. So we discuss, for example, the possibility to have a grade plus and a grade minus. So it could be a program grade 5 minus. So it means that you're not a full 5, or a 5 plus. That means that you're almost 6. So there have been lots of different propositions with that. And then I go to the Leiden Manifesto for that, because the Leiden Manifesto says we should avoid false precision. And in this case, if we expand the grade, what kind of metric we are really trying to achieve? So I think that we are better served with a grading system where the differences mean something. And a good example is with grade 1 and 2. Grade 1 and 2 means a program is shut down. So what's the difference between being graded 1 or being graded 2? Because in both cases, the consequence is the same. You're shut down. So there's no reason to have this sort of difference. And so what I would propose is to have a more direct scale where grades represent something like, for example, some Scandinavian countries are discussing right now, merging some of the grades in their evaluation system. And finally, regarding the comparative perspective or the predetermined perspective. I'm completely against a movement that's taking place right now in Brazil, in part motivated by the judicial system, that is to create kind of a checklist of issues that needs to be addressed by the programs and that would guarantee a grade. We had something like that in the past, and this has changed in the 1990s because everyone was getting top grade because it was only about chasing the metrics. So I do believe that we should have a comparative analysis as we do today. So in Brazil there are 49, now 50 evaluation areas, 49 at the time I finished the dissertation, and comparison is performed within those areas. So all the courses in sociology are compared to those in sociology, the philosophy, engineering with engineering, and I think that's an important aspect. What is missing there is to create different layers of comparison within the disciplines, in the sense that we can have comparison of graduate programs that are more alike. So not comparing every single mathematics program in the country, but comparing those that have a mission more towards expanding the frontiers of science, different to those that have, as a mission, societal impact. So I think comparison should be with the peers. Thank you.
Thank you. The examination shall be continued by Professor Jacob from Lund University, and it's a pleasure to welcome you in Leiden and at this table.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice thesis. It was very interesting to read. I have a question that is more overarching. I'd like you to address the issue of what role does doctoral education play in the Brazilian development effort, and how do you think that your proposals about evaluating doctoral education help policymakers to understand how they're progressing towards meeting that goal? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, hooggeleerde opponents, for your words and for the interesting question. It really is quite interesting what Brazil has made with its science system. So the country did not have a science system that developed spontaneously. So what we have in Brazil is the direct result of public policy. And because of the way that system developed, it has some peculiarities. So what happened is that, different to what happens in most countries, instead of having a research system where you have a graduate system as an integral part, you have the opposite. So you have a graduate system where research is conducted. And this created kind of an approach to how science and research is conducted in a country that even became part of our constitution. So the current Brazilian constitution from 1988 established the indivisibility of research and education. And this creates opportunities, but it creates challenges as well. So the evaluation system in that sense has a very significant role, a very significant value to help shaping the system. And a good example of that I mentioned in the chapter where I talk about a national evaluation push towards societal impact, where we show how evaluation determined that we should value, as a country, more technological production, in the sense that, like in the Netherlands, we would be able to value everyone's talent. And it's all about recognition, it's about rewards that go beyond the traditional publications. And this has immediately created an impact in the system where there is a movement towards more impact. And in our system, we see this characteristic all the time. So we have research inside the universities. We have a huge support system through the different agencies helping shape that system. And today, graduate education is considered the main island of excellence in research and education in the country, because Brazil has over 2,500 higher education institutions, of which nearly 500 are engaged in research. So you imagine that we have a lot of asymmetry in that system. And because we have a very robust and very well-developed graduate education, it can be a good support for developing not only the research in the country, but to create an important bridge to improve our higher education system as well.
Okay, thank you. The examination shall be continued by Dr. Woolley from Ingenio in Spain, and we are very pleased that you're participating today too.
Thank you very much. Esteemed candidate, thank you very much for the opportunity to read your thesis, which I think is an important contribution in building bridges between scholarship in the Global South and the Global North, which I think we all consider extremely important. My question goes a little bit to the methodology of the thesis, which is summarised really nicely in your introductory section, but then percolates through the thesis, which is a bit of a tension between your professional experience and your knowledge in practice of the Brazilian evaluation system, and then what you came to learn throughout the thesis journey. In particular, I'd be really interested if you could tell us, are there any particular theories, methods, or empirical results that have reconfigured the way you understand the Brazilian system? Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear lead opponents. I do believe that this journey, this doctoral journey, has helped me reshape some of my perspectives. And it's for sure about what I knew and what I came to know during the process, but it's also about how I knew it and how I came to know. So being an actor inside a national evaluation system, I was there empirically. I was there witnessing and being part of a decision process that shaped evaluation in the past 15 years. And in this process, you tend to be very pragmatic, very practical about the efforts and what you're doing, because you have to recognize the limitations that we have, how much you have in terms of resources, in terms of time, in terms of human resources that are there to perform a national evaluation in the scale that we had. And then with the beginning of this doctoral journey, you start looking at things from a different perspective. You start looking at the theory, you start looking at the literature, and then you see things that helped shaped my whole argument. For example, the theory of path dependency is spread throughout the thesis. In every single chapter, you have always this perspective, trying to understand where we're coming from, the reasons that shaped what we have today, and because of that, we can understand your reality, and you can understand also things that you can change from that. So this is an important approach that I had. And regarding the specific aspects of it, I could say that there are basically three elements that were shaped by this new view. So the first was the understanding that you see, especially in the first part of the thesis. It's understanding how we got where we are, and especially understanding that there are reasons to shape what we have today that no longer exist. So there's no reason for us to continue doing what you're doing, because one day that made sense. And through a documental analysis, through digging deep into the reasons of today, that was a conclusion that we could reach. The second point is about valorization. So especially in the second part of the thesis, where I approach an international comparison, what you see, and I experienced that because when I first came to Europe, some 7 years ago, to be part of the STI in Valencia, I came hat in hand. Like, please help me, the guy from Global South who's trying to improve its own evaluation system. And then by talking to the peers, by doing the research, and by understanding their systems, I saw, whoa, wait a minute. There are a lot of things that we're doing very well. For example, Brazil has a very well-established diamond open access system for 25 years. And Europe is right now struggling to develop that, something that we already have. Our current research information systems are beyond anything I've ever seen, and continued without seeing. So I learned a lot in this process that it's really a bilateral cooperation. It's lessons from the Global South, lessons from the Global North, to build better science. And the third aspect is about evidence. So in the third part of the dissertation, you see that I went into especially the scientometrics approach to look into things that we considered anecdotically in our practice in Brazil. And I was able to really find evidence of things that we knew to be true or that surprised us. For example, in chapter 8, when I investigate the coverage of Brazilian publications in the Web of Science, I was able not only to confirm that we have a disciplinary distribution that's not good at all, but it's worse than what we have globally. So we know that social science and humanities are not well covered, so we know that local language is not well covered, but in case of Brazil, not only that's true, but that's even more extreme than we have for the rest of the world, increasing the value of local databases such as Cielo, RedLeak, Latindex. And I believe these findings can really help policymakers make decisions that are really informed and based not only in their impressions, in their empirical knowledge, but in the evidence that's being sought for. Thank you.
The examination shall be continued by Professor Hessels.
Waarde kandidaat, congratulations with your manuscript, which I've read with great interest, and it reports on an impressive amount of work. You may not be surprised that I would like to discuss with you Chapter 10 about evaluating societal impact of research in Brazil. In particular, I would like to focus on the figures in this chapter, in which you make fascinating comparisons between different research areas and over time in the production of different types of output. And if you look at figure 10.4, which is on page 249, it shows the relative share of practical output versus scientific publications for 49 different research areas. This figure leads to a couple of observations about humanities being very active in producing practical outputs, where in most programs, bibliographic production, as you call it, is below 50%. This suggests that humanities in Brazil are relatively more oriented at creating societal impact than exact sciences or life sciences. But I'm not immediately convinced about that suggestion. I would like to ask you a couple of questions about the meaning of this figure and the practical applications also for research evaluation. And I hope that you'll give brief answers so we can develop some kind of conversation. So first, I would like to ask you, what is the unit of analysis in this figure? Do I understand correctly that it is based on simply numbers of output reported in different categories, such as papers, books, organized events, or patents?
Yes, this information has been extracted from the Sucupira platform, that is the current research information system, where we collect information from all graduate programs in the country.
Right, right. And then, if that is the case, how would you explain the comparatively high share of practical outputs in humanities? What could be the reason for it being higher than the other fields?
Well, this has two elements that help shape the results. So one is reporting, and the second is the actual production. So what happens is that for a long time, the Brazilian system has collected the different all the different types of information from graduate programs in the country. So this is something that has been established even in the 1970s, initially with a paper report, and then after with current research information systems. So we have information on faculty, on production, on students, PhD candidates, everything that goes on inside a research unit, a graduate unit. And this information is usually reported based on the evaluation criteria. Mm-hmm. So for a long time, we didn't have a lot of good coverage for technological production, right, because it wouldn't count very much in the evaluation, except for some areas. So some of the disciplines, especially in the social science and humanities, they have a tradition to value more than the traditional scientific output. So because of that, they already have a tradition not only of producing those types of materials, because it's valued, but also reporting them. Mm. And with this movement, what you see, it's a slight movement more recently with the different programs, especially in the exact technological and multidisciplinary science and also the life sciences, to move a little bit towards that direction that the humanities and social science have already performed. So it's about more is being reported because now it's valued, and it's about a historical valorization from the disciplines.
Okay, but then if we look more closely at these different activities, the types of production that you list in table 10.1, I was wondering, do you think that each of these requires a similar amount or time or effort to produce? Because in this table, there's a lot of different types. For example, organizing a workshop, or producing a newspaper article, or starting a new company. Is it reasonable to compare to add these up and to compare them across disciplines?
No, not at all. I think that when you talk about the different types of products that are here listed, they should and they are being valued according to the different efforts that are put into them. So, for example, if you have a cultivar, that's a very important product for areas such as biotechnology, agricultural sciences, and so on. It's something that would take a decade to develop. And of course, it's going to be valued much more than it would a paper would be, for example. So what's happening is that, and this is an analysis that's included in figure 10.1, in the interactive dashboard, there's this dimension on how the different disciplines are evaluating and valuing those different products. And in some cases, the products are being valued much more than they would be otherwise.
But still, in your figure, they're all the same.
Yeah, so in this figure, my objective is not to compare mathematics with sociology, but to compare mathematics with mathematics. So the idea is that you have the different disciplines on different time frames before the new policy and after the new policy. So compared to itself, we see an improvement, and that's what really matters in that sense. But of course, you have to go, and the importance of comparison within disciplines for that.
Because I would like to add one more dimension of complexity. If you look at the publication cultures of these different fields, there will also be a lot of differences, because the numbers of scientific output reflect in the exact sciences more journal papers, while in the humanities they will reflect more monographs or single authored papers, which take more time to produce.
Exactly.
So in that sense, the difference over time may also change more easily in humanities, because there is a relatively small number of scientific output and maybe a relatively high number of practical output, because producing a journal, opinion piece in a journal, or giving advice to policymakers, if you count them, you will easily achieve higher numbers than in exact sciences.
That's true.
Do you agree?
That's true. Yeah, no, I agree completely. That's why I mentioned we should avoid trying to make comparisons across disciplines so we could respect the practices. Just an observation is that in the case specifically here, when I use bibliographic, I also include books. So, for example, in a field like history, you have that as part of the more traditional scientific output and not the technological production.
Thanks for the conversation. I
Thank you very much.
To continue this at another occasion.
For sure.
The examination shall be continued by Professor Weltman.
Esteemed candidate, I very much enjoyed reading the dissertation. It took quite some time because it's a really extensive piece of work, but very detailed and very rich, and I enjoyed that a lot. I would like to ask you two questions about Chapter 7. In this chapter, you show, and you seem to be actually quite concerned about the fact that in the past, in the evaluation system, journals were evaluated very differently in different research areas. So in your view, this is a problem that needed to be solved, needed to be addressed, which indeed was what happened. I was wondering, that's my first question, whether this actually really is a problem, or whether there might also be reasons to consider this to be actually a reflection of the richness and the diversity of the research system. So I would like to invite you to reflect a bit more on that issue. My second question is about a concern that I have myself. So I read this chapter and the journals in the Brazilian system, the way they are handled, and I understand the pros and cons of the different approaches, but I started to feel more and more uneasy when I read the chapter, because it's all about journals. And I happen to know that you yourself are actually working on setting up a new way of doing publishing and doing peer review outside the journal system. And now I'm a bit concerned, because the thing you are setting up, together with colleagues like indeed myself, that thing, it seems, is going to be a complete failure in Brazil, because it's kind of not considered in the evaluation system. So am I right? Is there a problem indeed? And if so, how can it be addressed? That's my second question.
Thank you, hooggeleerde opponents. Yes, Very interesting questions. The first one about the problem of having a diverse approach or diverse results for evaluation. So what used to happen until the last evaluation cycle is that each one of the different disciplines, the 49 in the country, would be able to assess all the journals that were used by research units in their discipline to publish during that period. And that would create issues regarding relevance and pertinence. So we have a system that's called qualis. So the name evokes quality. And then you are saying, for example, that a journal such as Science is in the bottom 50% of the quality. You are getting journals that are considered of high quality in humanities being considered completely without value for different disciplines. In the chapter, I provide an example of a journal that I had the opportunity to publish. So it's a journal on evaluation in higher education. It's considered by education in Brazil to be a top journal. But it has been classified in every single possible strata in the whole scale, even what we call C, that means this is worthless. Shouldn't even be counted. And the problem for that is that, one, disciplines sometimes don't have the tools to assess the quality of something that's kind of alien to them. So that was an issue that sometimes would appear. And the second is that you would have layers of pertinence and relevance in saying, okay, this is not really relevant for my area, or it's not really close to my area, so I'm going to evaluate it lower so I can value my own journals. And that would create kind of this strange system where how can you say you are evaluating quality, but you yourself cannot have a consistent output with that. So I do agree completely with your approach that these differences should be valued, but they should be valued as an additional indicator. So if I'm in economics and there's a philosophy journal that I believe doesn't have a lot of connection to my field, I can recognize its value and I can add a layer, for example, a deflator, saying, okay, this is not really connected to my area, so I'm using a deflator to say that I'm not going to count this as much as another. But I'm not saying that something I don't understand sometimes is not good. So what we did with the change in the system is that you evaluate the journals that you own. So each area has the authority and the knowledge to say this is good, this is not good, either through qualitative or quantitative methods, or hopefully with a mix of these. So I think that this is an approach. It's important to have this distinction, but do not put everything in the same result, in the same number, and expect that to reflect everything. And the second part about changing the system, I really do believe, as you know, that we need to change how science is produced, how science is communicated, and the whole perspective that we have been working with the publish, review, curate. I think it's very important to develop. Today, we still have a very journal-centric evaluation in Brazil. So I have been discussing with evaluation how can we step away from the journal and go to the article level when we are able to. When you have the data, when you have the coverage, when you can calculate the indicators for that, and to keep a qualitative perspective for that yet does not have a perfect coverage. And at the same way that we have today a qualis for journals, but we have a qualis for books, one for technological productions, one for artistic output, one for events where we evaluate conference. We could have one for alternative publishing methods, and I think that this effort, like Meteor, could be a part of this. So it's all about finding the ways, and this is why I believe this connection between policy and research is very important, because working together, researchers can help policymakers to get the tools to better evaluate their work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The explanation shall be continued by Dr. van Leeuwen.
Esteemed candidate, dear André, first of all, thank you very much for the very thorough and deep digging analysis. I really appreciated the work and also appreciate being such a nice colleague over the last couple of years. It's been really a great pleasure working with you, particularly last year with respect to the teaching we developed for Dutch and Norwegian research funders. It was really great. My question will focus on Chapter 4. In Chapter 4 you compare the Dutch evaluation system and the Brazilian system, evaluation system. And in the SEP, in the Dutch evaluation protocol, you find the concept of benchmarking. And benchmarking is one of the ways evaluation can take place. Actually, it's real ill defined in the Dutch system, and it's often not used so often. However, in the Brazilian context, it's really a great thing to use benchmarking techniques in assessing research. So what I would like you to reflect upon, the concept of benchmarking. What is your personal perspective on benchmarking as an evaluative technique? How is it functioning in the Brazilian system? And also, how does it relate to the fact that benchmarking is used in different evaluation cycles and time? So how is it actually temporarily being dealt with in the context of the Brazilian evaluation system?
Thank you very much, dear lead opponents. And thank you for the collaboration in this past few years, and hopefully for the collaboration in the future years as well. And regarding benchmarking, I think there are very interesting perspectives on how can we benchmark different research units. In the case of the Netherlands, I had a very interesting experience by being able to support our board of directors in developing our self-evaluation for CWTS. And one of the interesting debates we had was, do we benchmark or not? And the decision was no. We don't see that for our strategy. It would be relevant at this point to benchmark us with different units because of the peculiar characteristics of the work conducted at CWTS. So our benchmark was our own. So we compared our development to our history and to the things that we have been doing before. And this option, it's quite interesting because sometimes you have the possibility to benchmark. So in the Dutch system, you see that, for example, in psychology, where most of the different research units and departments in psychology in the country decide to benchmark and to look at their development in a comparative way. But this is an option. This is something that you can choose to perform if necessary. In the case of Brazil, we have a forced benchmarking. So every single graduate program inside a discipline, inside an evaluation area, is benchmarked against each other. So if you look at veterinary medicine, we have 100 different graduate programs in the country. In the interdisciplinary area, we have over 300 research units being benchmarked against each other. And what happens in this benchmarking process is that you're going to get the indicators that you want to measure, and then you're going to calculate the median. And every time you calculate a median of an indicator and you grade against that median, the median becomes the new minimum. And then you get always the complaints of academia saying that the evaluation system is forcing the system to a reality that's really not something you can maintain, because every year you need to publish more at every cycle. It's more publications, it's more output, it's more supervision, it's better grades at everything, better rates of graduation of students, and you need more prizes, you need more everything, because you always have that median. And the problem is that this forces an homogeneous system, because the metrics are the same, and everyone needs to perform against those metrics. If you deviate from that and you try to do something different, that's not going to be measured, and you're probably going to underperform in what's being measured. So the problem that I have today with what we have in Brazil, and I think that we can get some inspiration from the Dutch model, is okay, let's do benchmarking, but let's not benchmark across 100 programs that should be allowed to be different, to have different missions, different objectives. Let's benchmark against those that are similar, that are close, and the benchmarking can be also a very learning opportunity, and not only a punitive approach that if you are below the median, you're not good enough, and so you're dropping your grade. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The explanation shall be continued by Dr. van der Weijden.
Esteemed candidates, dear André, thanks for your well-written dissertation. My question concerns about chapter 5. It won't surprise you, the impact of graduate education. Your analysis showed that Brazil has a high rate of graduations per publication, and this suggests that graduate education in Brazil has a larger role in the national science system than what can be seen in other countries, such as the Netherlands, as you showed in figure 5.2 in page 149. However, your analyses are based on the Web of Science data only, so I have 3 sub-questions for you. First, what future studies or methods do you propose to further investigate this? The second, what is the role of graduate education in other Global South countries, and to what extent do you think that there are differences or similarities with Brazil? And finally, you studied graduate education in Brazil and experienced doing a PhD in the Netherlands. And if you take that together, what would you recommend policymakers in the Dutch Ministry of Science, Education and Culture? In other words, what can we learn in the Netherlands from the Brazil graduate education system to improve the Dutch system? Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear lead opponents. Yes, indeed, Chapter 5 has been an initial exploration of how can we find metrics, how can we find evidence to support a narrative that we know to be true in Brazil, that, as I mentioned, research takes place within a graduate system. And so everyone in the country would shout different numbers. So we would say, oh, 95% of all research conducted in Brazil is in graduate education. Somebody would say 90, somebody would say 80. And every time you try to chase the source of those statements, you can't really find them. So this was an exercise to try and explore this solution. And a next step to this has been looking into OpenAlex as an alternative. So there are 2 things that are being conducted in an expanded version of this chapter. So the first was looking at OpenAlex, and the second is a partnership with the Portal of Journals in Brazil, where very, very intensive work to find DOIs that are missing in the database so we can better match different data sets. It's also being conducted. And what we see from that is a slightly different perspective. So in the case of OpenAlex, an interesting thing, if we get the past decade of publications through Web of Science, Brazil is number 13 in scientific production worldwide, with around 650,000 papers over a decade. If you go to Scopus, that is said to have a better coverage of Brazil, we go to 670,000, and we actually drop a position to number 14, because other countries, like Russia, also get better coverage, and then Russia jumps in front of us. But if you go to OpenAlex, we have over 1 million papers in the same period, and Brazil jumps to number 7. in the scale. And the reason for that is because OpenAlex has a lot of coverage regarding Cielo, Latindex, Redlic, regional databases, publications in Portuguese. So there's a lot still to explore in this database and to clean the data and to be able to calculate the indicators for that. But we have an important movement in that sense. But even looking at that very different coverage, when we plot the same data here, we still see that Brazil has a slightly different position. And we also have Mexico and Russia that has this kind of dependency on graduate education. And talking to people from these countries, they also recognize the same perspective. Our research is very graduate education centric. So I think that we can explore this, and this characteristic, it's mostly to these countries. Most other countries have parallel developments of graduate systems. And regarding the lessons, I think there are many, as we have had many chances to discuss. So I think that one is data. So it's a challenge, and I saw that when we were performing our own self-evaluation, how challenging it was to collect all the data that we need within our own department. To be continued.
Esteemed candidates, the time allotted to the examination of your dissertation and its propositions has passed. The committee withdraws in order to deliberate. I request that you and your company await our return here. Esteemed candidate, we have examined your dissertation and the propositions applied thereto. We have heard your defense and we have considered the report by the faculty concerning your previous studies. On the basis of this, we have decided to admit you to the doctorate. Professor De Rijke is empowered to confer that dignity upon you in the customary fashion.
En dat ga ik in het Nederlands doen. Partly. Volgaarne aanvaard ik de taak mij door de rector magnificus der universiteit opgedragen. Uit kracht dan van de bevoegdheid ons bij wet toegekend, volgens het besluit van de commissie hier tegenwoordig, verklaar ik bij deze u, André Brasil Barandas Pinto, te bevorderen tot doctor. Ten bewijze hiervan zal u het diploma door rector, secretaris en promotor ondertekend en met het grootzegel der universiteit bevestigd ter hand worden gesteld. Nadat ik al zo de mij opgelegde taak heb volbracht, mag ik de eerste zijn die u als dokter begroet en met de verkregen waardigheid gelukwens. I know your Dutch has significantly improved but I can imagine you missed part of what I just said in Dutch. I said that I'm honored to be the first to congratulate you and to greet you as Dr. André Brasil. All of us here are here to celebrate your achievements as a new doctorate holder at the University of Leiden. And your journey was quite a remarkable one. You carved out a path. Yeah? Okay, sorry. Ooh, except for me, yeah. Yeah. With the determination to improve the evaluation of graduate education in Brazil, beginning while you were still working at CAPES. After both Ed and I had visited you at CAPES in Brasilia, we immediately knew you would blend in at CWTS. Like many of us at the center, you're driven by a desire not only to understand, but also very much to intervene. To want to understand existing evaluation systems, but also really to contribute to their improvement. So in your case, you were inspired, I think, also by the Leiden Manifesto, which is, I think, what initially drew you to our center. So off you went to the Netherlands, along with your lovely family, and from that moment you started working with us, and you have immediately blown away Ed and myself, as I'm sure many colleagues with us, with your tremendous work ethics, your extraordinary desire to learn new skills and methods, to try out every new piece of software and tool available on the market. You surprised us with a ceaseless commitment to your PhD, but also an appetite to do much more than that, including participating in other projects to which you really made a mark, including the RRI projects led by Ingeborg, the Open Science Hub, the work around the Institute's self-evaluation that you already talked about. Ed and I felt it was our job in each supervision meeting to tell you that you were doing more than enough. But to be honest, I think that was pretty useless. We tried and tried, but honestly it became a bit ritualistic because you have such a tremendous drive. We should have known what we were getting yourself into because you already had quite some training and education while you arrived in Leiden on your resume, including years of experience at CAPES, but also multiple undergraduate degrees, wonderful masters with specialist degrees as well. So you are really someone that will continue to learn and develop yourself, which is amazing. I don't think Ed and I have ever met a more hardworking PhD candidate. Perhaps that was in part also driven by occasional doubts about your own potential as a researcher, which we tried to tackle together, but it kept appearing every now and then. It resulted in an extraordinary level of determination. And we all know that you didn't always have it very easy. For instance, because of the extreme political turmoil in your home country. You were doing your research at a time that extreme right-wing politics could significantly affect the Brazilian graduate education system. But you managed, and I think it must also have helped that you had such a relaxed daily supervisor with Ed, for which I'm also very grateful. So today we do celebrate the coming into being of that new persona. We celebrate that you become Dr. Brasil. And I hope that you are very proud of what you've accomplished. We've certainly come very far, and you should be very proud of yourself. It comes to an end now, that journey. You've already started a new chapter at CWTS. We are very happy that that all works out. You will continue to concentrate your efforts on multiple areas, of course. National evaluation systems, scientometrics, scholarly publishing, open science, responsible research conduct. You already became a member of the UNESCO chair. You already joined Rory. So again, this sounds a lot to many of us. It is a lot. I guess it seems smart for all of us at CWTS to prepare for an excess because working hard and exceeding expectations is something of a habit of you. So André, you've proven time and again that you are more than capable of delivering an ocean while we were asking for a drop. And yet we wouldn't want it any other way. Congratulations.
Ik kwijt me van een aangename plicht, Dr. Brasil, door u ook namens het College voor Promoties en de universiteit te gelukwensen met de verworven vaardigheid. It's an agreeable duty to me, Dr. Brasil, to congratulate you upon your degree, also on behalf of the university and its Council of Deans. And herewith, I declare this ceremony closed.